$83,000, that's what we'd saved. 6 years of Joseph working 3 jobs, his regular construction foreman position, then Uber at night, then weekend deliveries for a local hardware store. 6 years of me taking every overtime shift at the clinic, skipping lunches, mending my own clothes, telling Emma that we're saving for something special whenever she asked why we couldn't go to Disneyland like her friend Lily's family. And we'd done it. We bought a house. A real house with a yard in a school district that didn't have metal detectors at the entrance. It was supposed to be the start of something new. My phone buzzed. Joseph, on my way back with the truck. Emma's packed and ready. You okay? I typed back. Fine. Mom's coming over. 3 dots. Then why? Because I told her we were moving today. Because despite everything, some part of me still wanted her to see it. To see what we'd built. Maybe to finally hear her say she was proud of me. I sent. She wants to help with the last boxes. Joseph's reply took longer this time. Allison. She's not helping. She's checking. I didn't respond. Because I knew he was right, and I didn't want to admit it. My mother, Catherine Reed, had never been the kind of mother who showed up with casseroles and warm hugs. She was the kind who showed up with unsolicited advice, sharp observations, and a running tally of everything I owed her. Since my father died when I was 10, she'd made sure I understood the arithmetic of our relationship. She'd sacrificed, and I'd repay. End of story. But when I'd mentioned we were buying a house 6 months ago, something had shifted as she'd called me. Actually called, not texted, and offered to oversee the renovation. Contractors cut corners, she said. They'd use cheap materials if no one was watching. She'd handled the renovations on her own house after my father died. She knew what to look for. I'd been so grateful, I nearly cried. For once, she was showing up. For me. Of course, I should have asked why she was showing up now. I should have asked what she was really building. Joseph arrived at 9:47 with Emma in the back seat, her purple backpack stuffed with the crayons and coloring books I'd packed to keep her occupied during the move. She bounded out of the car like a small, unstoppable force, her braids flying, her sneakers squeaking on the asphalt. Mommy, can I pick my room first? Please? I already decided. I want the one with the window that looks at the tree. But I might change my mind. I need to see it. I need to feel it. I laughed despite everything. You'll get the room with the window, baby. It's yours. Joseph came around the truck and kissed my forehead, quick and automatic. You look exhausted. I'm fine. You always say that. Because it's always true. He never pressed. That was one of the things I loved about him, and one of the things that made me feel so goddamn guilty. Joseph had never asked me to be anything other than what I was. He'd taken my mother's coldness, my brother's entitlement, my endless string of anxieties and apologies, and he just absorbed them, steadied me, like I was a boat, and he was the dock. But a dock can only take so many storms. Emma was already running toward the house, our house, before I could stop her. Wait, sweetie, we haven't even. The door's open. Look, the door's open. I turned. The front door of our new house was swinging inward, not ajar, wide open, like someone had just walked through it. Joseph's hand found my elbow. Did the contractor leave it unlocked? I don't know. I locked it yesterday. I was here yesterday and I locked it. Maybe the realtor came by? I don't think so. The keys are... I stopped, because at that moment, my mother's car pulled into the driveway behind us, a silver sedan that had seen better decades. And in the passenger seat, my brother, Dennis. My stomach dropped like someone had cut the rope. Dennis had always been the center of my mother's universe. This wasn't jealousy, it was just fact. When we were kids, Dennis got new sneakers. I got his hand-me-downs a size too big. Dennis got to stay home from school when he had a cold. I got sent to class with a fever and a note telling the nurse to call my mother only if I was dying. Dennis dropped out of high school, and my mother spent years telling everyone it was because he had to help support the family. He didn't. He played video games and worked part-time at a gas station until he got fired for showing up drunk. I went to community college on a scholarship I'd worked for, and my mother told everyone it was because she got lucky. Dennis had been married for almost 2 years to a woman named Michelle, who clearly regretted every decision that led her to our family. Michelle wanted a house. Dennis didn't have a job that could buy one, naturally, my mother's solution was to find someone who did. I just never thought it would be me. My mother got out of the car first, smoothing her blouse like she was arriving at a board meeting instead of her daughter's first home. Dennis followed, hands in his pockets, looking around the neighborhood with the casual disdain of someone who'd never worked for anything in his life. Allison, my mother said, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We need to talk. Mom, what are you doing here? The door? Did you unlock the door? I have a key. How do you have a key? She waved a hand dismissively. I had a copy made, in case of emergencies. Emergencies. This isn't an emergency. This is. Allison, Dennis cut in. His voice had that lazy, slightly mocking tone he'd used since we were teenagers. Relax. We're just talking. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, who's in her house? I looked past my mother, through the open door. I could see shapes inside. Furniture. Boxes. A lamp I didn't recognize. A coffee table that definitely wasn't mine. I walked past my mother without another word, and she didn't stop me. Neither did Dennis. That's how I knew something was really wrong. They wanted me to see it. The living room had been completely rearranged. My couch, the one Joseph and I had saved for months to buy, had been pushed against the wrong wall. My bookshelf was in the kitchen for some reason, and my new dining table had been covered with someone else's placemats. Paisley, I hate Paisley. On the coffee table that wasn't mine sat a framed photo of my mother, Dennis, and Dennis's wife, Michelle, taken at some restaurant I'd never been invited to. Standing in the middle of it all was Michelle, holding a cup of coffee like she owned the place, her expression a careful mask of defiance mixed with what? Embarrassment? Satisfaction? I couldn't tell. She was wearing her scrubs, she worked at a dental office, and her hair was pulled back in the kind of practical ponytail that said, "I'm busy, I'm important, I have things to do." "Allison," she said, like we were old friends. "Good to see you." I couldn't speak. I just stared at the photo. At her. At the boxes marked Dennis in black marker. Joseph appeared behind me, Emma tucked protectively against his chest. What the hell is this? Dennis sauntered in like he was hosting the party. "We're just getting settled, man. Don't make it weird." Settled. Joseph's voice was dangerously quiet. "You're settling in our house?" "Mom, what is this?" I finally found my voice. "What are you doing?" My mother walked past me to the center of the room. She set her purse down on the counter, my kitchen, and turned to face us with the expression she always used when delivering what she considered bad news that I needed to accept. "I've thought about this for a long time," she said, "and I realized something. Your father died. He left me with nothing, but I raised you alone, that I put food on the table, that I kept a roof over your head. And all I ever asked was that one day, you'd help your brother the way a sister should." I felt the words land like physical blows, not because they were new, she'd been saying variations of it since I can remember, but because this time, she'd taken something concrete. Something Joseph and I had bled for. "Mom, this house is ours. We bought it. We have the deed. And I gave you $5,000 to move," she said, as if this was a reasonable trade. "You can find another rental." "5,000? Mom, this house is worth 83,000, plus the renovations. I know exactly what it's worth, and I'm offering you a way out. Take the money. Find somewhere else to live." "Mom, I can't." "You can. You just don't want to." Joseph stepped forward, and I saw the shift in his posture. The way his shoulders squared, the way his jaw tightened. He wasn't angry yet. Not fully. But he was getting there. "Catherine," he said, using her full name like a shield. "We have two options here. Point one, you and Dennis and Michelle leave this house willingly, and we forget this ever happened. Two, I call the police and let them explain what trespassing and breaking and entering mean, your choice." My mother laughed. Actually laughed. "You're going to call the police on your own mother-in-law? Let's see how that plays out." "I'll call them," Joseph said calmly. "I'll call them right now." Dennis moved toward Joseph, posturing like he was about to do something. "You don't talk to my mother like that. Your mother just stole my house. My sister's house. I'm his wife." I heard myself say. The words came out steadier than I felt. "And this is our house. The three of us." Dennis turned to me, and his face was that familiar cocktail of entitlement and contempt. "Allison, you need to grow up. Mom raised you alone. She worked 3 jobs after Dad died while you got to go to school, and she worked 3 jobs because she spent all of Dad's life insurance on your car, on your business ventures, on your lawyers when you got arrested for drunk driving." The room went quiet. My mother's face had paled, and for a split second, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Something that looked almost like fear, but it was gone before I could parse it. "That's a lie," she said. "Is it? Because I have the bank statements that I found done when I was cleaning out your storage unit last year. The one you told me was full of Dad's old things. There's a receipt for a 2003 Mustang, and a check to a law firm for $17,000, and..." "Allison, that's enough." Joseph's hand was on my arm, gentle but firm. "Not here. Not now." Emma was crying. I hadn't even noticed. She was pressing her face into Joseph's chest, her small body shaking. "Emma, sweetie, it's okay." "I want my room, Mommy. I want my room with the window and the tree." My mother turned to Emma with a look I'd seen on her face 100 times, the cold, assessing gaze of someone who didn't consider children worthy of feelings. "Little girls don't get rooms," my mother said. "They get married and they leave. That's how it works." "Mom, don't talk to her like that." "I'm talking to her like a grandmother who knows how the world works." "You're talking to her like you talk to me, and I'm not going to let you do that to her." I heard the words come out of my mouth, and some part of me was surprised they were there. For 34 years, I'd been the quiet daughter, the grateful daughter. The one who never pushed back, never asked for more, never raised her voice, but something had broken. Not loudly, not dramatically, just cracked, like a wall that had been holding up the whole house, finally giving way under the weight. Joseph let go of Emma and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Joseph, wait," I started. "No, we're done waiting." My mother's eyes went wide. "You wouldn't." "Catherine, I've been married to your daughter for 8 years. I've watched her bite her tongue every time you told her she wasn't good enough. She wasn't doing enough. She didn't love you enough. I've watched her send you money we couldn't afford because you needed it. I've watched her cry after every one of your phone calls, and I've never said anything because she asked me not to. But now you're in our house with our daughter, and I'm done." He dialed. I heard the ringing. My mother lunged for him. Actually lunged, like she was going to grab the phone out of his hand. Dennis grabbed her arm, holding her back. "Mom, what are you doing?" "She's going to ruin everything," my mother hissed. "That little." I've got 2 toddlers in the back of a Toyota that ran out of gas on the highway in July at 3 in the afternoon with no air conditioning. I've handled worse than you. That was from the person on the other end of the line, the dispatch operator, responding to some other crisis that had nothing to do with us, but my mother heard it, and something in her posture changed. I watched her shoulders drop. Her hands went to her sides. Her face cycled through emotions, anger, frustration, calculation, and then something else. Something I recognized because I'd felt it myself 100 times. Defeat. "No," she said. "No, I won't leave. Not without my son." Then you're both staying until the police get here, Joseph said. And they can explain the laws around grand larceny. This isn't a crime. This is a family matter. Stealing a house from your daughter and her husband is a crime. Putting her family's belongings on the street is a crime. Having your daughter's house keys copied without her permission is a crime. I can keep going if you want. Dennis looked between my mother and Joseph, and then at me. Allison, come on. You're not going to let him do this, are you? Let him do what? Protect our home. You're really going to call the cops on Mom? On your own brother? You brought our mother here to take our house, Dennis. You didn't even have the decency to ask. Because you'd say no. Exactly. Because it's a ridiculous ask. Michelle set down her coffee mug. My coffee mug, I realized, one of the set I'd bought at a yard sale 3 years ago, and walked toward the door. I'm not going to jail over this. I'm out. Michelle, wait. Dennis started. No. You said this was taken care of. You said your mother had it handled. I'm not getting arrested because your family can't get its act together. She pushed past me and walked out. I heard her car start and drive away. Dennis looked like he'd been slapped. Where's she going? I can't. I don't have a car. She took... Dennis, where's your car? I asked. In the shop. The one I paid to fix last month? Dennis had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to. Mom asked for me. Because you have money. We don't have money. We have a house we saved for 6 years to buy, and you're living in it. Joseph was still on the phone, now speaking in a low, steady voice that I knew meant he was giving our address. Yes. It's 1427 Oakwood Drive. They're still here. Yes. Thank you. My mother stood in the middle of the room, and I saw the change in her. The defeat had curdled into something else. Something I'd never seen before. She walked toward the front door. For a moment, I thought she was leaving. She wasn't. You want to do this the hard way? She asked. Fine. We'll do it the hard way. She turned to face me. I have medical records that I have letters from 3 doctors saying I need housing assistance because my daughter abandoned me. I have a folder of all the money you've given me, gifts, Allison, not loans, that I'm going to use to show that you've been financially supporting me. And I have a lawyer who's already told me that a daughter who's been providing for her mother for years might need to keep doing that. Maybe even in the house she bought. The room tilted around me. You have lawyers? Do you think I just showed up here today without a plan? I've been thinking about this since the day you told me you were buying a house. I knew you'd say no. You always say no. So I came prepared. Joseph's voice cut through the noise. The police are on their way. They're 4 minutes out. Good, my mother said. Then they can start the paperwork. The police arrived in 6 minutes. Not 4, 6, which gave me enough time to think, to realize what my mother had done. She hadn't just wandered into her house and started unpacking. She'd waited. She'd orchestrated. She'd been working on this for months, maybe longer, and I'd let her. I'd let her come to every renovation meeting. I'd let her talk to the contractor. I'd even given her a set of keys. You trusted her. Of course I trusted her. She was my mother. Even after everything, even after all the years of taking and never giving, I'd still believed that at some level, she loved me. That deep down, there was a mother who wanted the best for her daughter. But looking at her now, standing in the living room of my house, surrounded by boxes and furniture that didn't belong to her, explaining to the police officer with perfect calm that this was a family dispute and that I'd agreed to let her stay temporarily, I realized I'd been wrong. She didn't love me. She'd never loved me. She'd seen me as something useful, and she'd used me, and now that I wasn't useful anymore, she'd moved on to the next phase, taking what I had by force. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, is this your mother? Yes. And your brother? Yes. Are they supposed to be here? No. Did you give them permission to enter? No. Do you have documentation that this is your property? Joseph stepped forward. He had a folder in his hands, the closing paperwork, the deed, the bank statements showing our deposit, everything that proved we'd earned this house. The officer took it and flipped through it, his expression unreadable. Ma'am, he said to my mother, do you have documentation that you have a right to be here? She smiled, that sweet, sharp smile that had been the soundtrack of my childhood. I'm her mother. I have a right to be in my daughter's home. According to state law, adult children are not required to provide housing for their parents unless they're legally dependent or a court has ordered it. Are you legally dependent on your daughter? The court can decide that. The officer looked at her, then at me. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you and your son to leave the premises. If you don't, we'll have to remove you. My mother's composure cracked. You don't understand. This is my daughter's house. I have every right to be here. Ma'am, you don't have a legal right. There's no court order. There's no dependency agreement. There's just a deed with your daughter's name on it. I'm asking you to leave. Dennis had gone pale. Mom. Shut up, Dennis. No, listen, Mom. Michelle left. She's gone. She took the car. I don't have anywhere to go. You can go back to the rental. We don't have the rental anymore. You said we could move into the house. You said it was taken care of. My mother looked at me, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something in her eyes that might have been fear. Not fear of the police. Fear of losing. Of losing everything she'd built. And I realized she hadn't built anything. She'd just taken. From everyone who let her. You did this, I said quietly. You told Dennis he could move in. You told him you'd taken care of it. And now you're trying to make it happen. She nodded slowly. He's my son. I have to protect him. And what about me? You got a husband, a child, a house. What does Dennis have? Dennis has you. She flinched, just slightly. I'm his mother. It's my job to make sure he's taken care of. When does it stop? My voice rose, and for the first time, I didn't try to control it. When do I get to stop being the one who pays? When do I get to keep something for myself? When do I get to be your daughter instead of your asset? Allison. No, I'm done being quiet, and I'm done being grateful. I'm done letting you tell me I owe you for something you did because you had to, because you didn't have a choice, because you were my mother, and that's what mothers do. You're supposed to love me. You were supposed to protect me, and all you ever did was use me. My mother's face was a mask. Her voice was ice. You'll regret this. Maybe, but I'll regret letting you take this house more. They left at 12:43. I watched Dennis load his few boxes into a taxi. He had to call one because Michelle had taken the car, and my mother drive away with a look that promised something I didn't want to think about. The police officer gave us his card. If they come back, call us. Don't engage. Don't argue. Just call. Joseph shook his hand. Thank you. Mrs. Anderson, the officer turned to me. I know this isn't easy. Family stuff is always the hardest. But you did the right thing. I don't feel like it. Doesn't mean it wasn't right. He left. And then it was just us, me, Joseph, and Emma, standing in the middle of a house that was ours but didn't feel like it anymore. Emma tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can I still have the room with the window? I knelt down and pulled her into a hug so tight she squeaked. Yes, baby. You can have any room you want. Even the room with the tree. Especially the room with the tree. She ran off to explore, and I stayed on my knees on the living room floor, with Joseph crouching beside me, one hand on my back. You okay? No. You did good. You did really good. Did I? Yeah, you did. I turned my head, and I saw the house around me, the boxes we hadn't unpacked, the couch that had been pushed against the wrong wall, my mother's picture on the coffee table that wasn't mine. I stood up, walked over to the table, and threw the picture in the trash. I thought that was the end. I thought she'd gone. But that night, when we were trying to get Emma to sleep in her new room, in a mattress on the floor, with a stack of blankets and her stuffed box, I got the text. My mother, I'll be there in the morning. With my attorney. You can either agree to sign the house over voluntarily, or we can do this the hard way. Think about it. I read the message 3 times. Then I read it again. Joseph looked over my shoulder. What does she mean? The hard way? Maybe she means she'll drag me to court. Maybe she'll make me pay for her lawyer. Maybe She doesn't have a case. Doesn't she? She's been telling everyone who'll listen that she helped us buy this house. She's got receipts from the contractor. She's got emails and texts I sent thanking her for her help. She's got evidence that I've been sending her money for years. How is a judge going to look at that? Joseph didn't have an answer, because he knew what I knew. It's complicated when the person you're fighting is your own mother, even when you're right. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I thought about everything I'd done, everything I'd given, everything I'd sacrificed. And I thought about something my mother had said. You'll regret this. Maybe I would. Maybe I'd wake up tomorrow and realize I'd alienated my family. Maybe I'd be the villain in their story, the ungrateful daughter, the cold sister, the one who wouldn't share. But I'd also be the one who kept her house. Morning came with gray light and a hangover I'd earned without a single drink. My phone buzzed before 7 a.m. My mother. We're coming at 10. Be ready. I didn't respond. I got up, made coffee, and tried to figure out what I was going to do. Joseph came downstairs at 7:30, Emma's hand in his. She'd already chosen her room. The one with the window, obviously, and she'd already claimed the corner by the tree. She was talking about curtains and fairy lights and a bed shaped like a castle. Joseph listened to her with the patience of someone who knew this mattered, and then he came to the kitchen and wrapped his arms around me from behind. We'll figure this out, he said. We always do. Did you look at her message? I did. And I called a lawyer, a friend of mine from high school, Marcus. He does family law. He said he'd be here by 9. You called a lawyer? You think I'm not going to fight for a house? My throat tightened. Joseph, Don't thank me. Just stay with me, okay? We're in this together. I turned in his arms and leaned into him, and for a moment, I let myself feel it. The fear, the anger, the exhaustion, all of it. Then I pulled back. Okay, I said. Let's get ready. Marcus arrived at 9:05. He was a good man, solid, unassuming, with eyes that had seen too many family fights to be surprised by anything. He looked at my mother's text, looked at the deed, looked at the receipts she'd sent me. Your mother has no legal claim to this house, he said. But if she's determined to fight, she could make it expensive. Attorney's fees, discovery, depositions. She could drag this out for months. And if I sign the house over, then you lose a house you bought, a house you saved for, a house he stopped. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. I've been in family law for 15 years. I've seen parents do terrible things to their children, but I've seen children do terrible things to their parents. But the fights that start with property don't usually end with property. They end with something else. Like what? Like hearts, like trust, like the last shred of love you are holding on to. Your mother is fighting for this house, but what she's really fighting for is control. Control of you, control of your family, control of your resources. If you give her this house, she'll take something else next, something bigger. I knew he was right, but knowing and doing are 2 different things. You think I should fight her? I think you should ask yourself what you're willing to lose. My mother arrived at 10:02. She had a lawyer, a thin, gray man in an expensive suit named Mr. Thompson. Dennis was with her, looking smaller and more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. Michelle wasn't there. Dennis came in first, his hands in his pockets. Allison. Don't. I didn't know she was going to. You knew exactly what she was doing. You just didn't care. That's not true. Then why are you here? He didn't answer. And I knew why, because even now, even after losing his wife and his dignity and his claim to this house, he still needed my mother to take care of him. He still believed she could. My mother swept in like a general surveying a defeated army. "We're here to negotiate," she said. "Sit down." "I'm not sitting down in my own house." "Allison." "No. You wanted this fight? Fine. We'll fight. But we'll do it on the record." Marcus stepped forward. "Mrs. Reed, I'm representing Mrs. Anderson." "Representing her? For what?" "To protect her interests, which legally are aligned with the property she owns. The property you have no legal claim to." My mother's eyes narrowed. "I'm her mother. And she's an adult with a deed in her name." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Reed, we can take this to court, but we should also consider mediation, a civil agreement that serves everyone's interests." "I want the house," my mother said. "I don't think you understand the legal realities. I understand that I raised that girl alone for 34 years, and she owes me." "She doesn't owe you anything," Joseph said. "She didn't ask to be born. She didn't ask you to raise her. That was your choice, your legal obligation. She doesn't owe you for doing what you were legally required to do." My mother turned to him, and her eyes were scary. "She owes me everything. Catherine, if we have to go through discovery, you're going to have to share all of your financial documents, your medical records, the proof of that money Allison sent you. And I'm going to ask the court to examine whether a parent who takes thousands of dollars from a child over the years, in addition to the child's childhood wages, is really the disadvantaged party here. You already received everything from this relationship, and you want more because you need it, but that doesn't mean you're entitled to it. I'm going to make you prove that she owes you, and the question I'm going to ask in open court is, why did you need that money? What was it for? You're going to have to show me." My mother's face went pale. "There's nothing to show. I needed it." "For what?" "Because I'm her mother." "Your answer will be, why did you need it? If it was for necessities, you were a dependent. If it was for non-necessities, you weren't. So, why did you need it? What did you spend Allison's money on? What did you spend her childhood wages on? What did you spend her father's life insurance on?" Mr. Thompson stepped in. "Mrs. Reed, perhaps we should take a moment." "No, I've seen it." "Mrs. Reed, you don't have to answer." "I've seen it." But she wasn't fine. I could see it in her eyes. The fear, the calculation. And in that moment, I realized something. Joseph was right, and why mother had been taking from me for so long that she'd forgotten why she turned need into habit, habit into entitlement. Entitlement into a story she told herself, that she was the victim and I was the ungrateful one. But the story didn't hold up under pressure, and I was finally ready to see it fall apart. "I want 30 days, I said. Everyone turned to look at me. 30 days, I repeated. "You and Dennis leave the premises, you don't contact us, you don't come to the house, and after 30 days, we sit down and we talk again, without lawyers, without threats. Like a family." My mother stared at me. "Why would I agree to that?" "Because if you don't, I'm going to file a restraining order, and I'm going to sue you for the money I've given you over the years." "You wouldn't." "Try me." She looked at her lawyer, at Dennis, back at me. 30 days, she finally said, "and then we talk." Agreed. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep and Joseph had gone to get the takeout, I sat in the living room of my new house and tried to feel like it was mine. The boxes were still everywhere. The furniture was still in the wrong places. The ghost of my mother's presence lingered. But I was here, and I'd fought for it. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny voice whispered, "She's planning something." I should have listened. The first week of our 30-day truce felt like walking on a floor I knew was rigged with explosives. Every creak, every unexpected phone call, every time Emma asked, "Is Grandma coming back?" My heart seized. Joseph kept telling me to relax. Pete kept saying we'd won, that my mother had backed down, that the legal threat was enough. But I knew my mother. She didn't back down. She regrouped. I spent that first week going through boxes I'd packed in a hurry, trying to make the house feel like ours. Emma's room came together first. Pale purple walls, a second-hand bed frame Joseph had sanded and painted, fairy lights strung across the ceiling. She'd stand in the doorway and just look at it, like she couldn't quite believe it was real. "Mommy, is this really our house? Forever?" "Yes, baby, forever." "Even when I'm big?" "Even then." She'd nod seriously, like she'd just been given classified information, and then she'd run off to rearrange her stuffed animals for the 15th time. I'd watch her go, and feel something I couldn't quite name. Not peace, not safety, something more like a held breath. On the 4th day, Joseph came home with a cardboard box he'd found in the back of his truck. This was in the garage when we moved in. I think the previous owners left it. "What's in it?" "Old paperwork. Receipts. Some stuff from the renovation before we bought it." I pulled out a stack of papers and started sifting through them. Most of it was useless. Warranties for appliances that had been replaced, a faded business card for a plumber who'd probably retired. But near the bottom, I found something that made my fingers freeze. A bank statement from a credit union I'd never heard of, in my father's name. "What is this?" I whispered. Joseph came over, reading over my shoulder. "That's your dad's. He died when I was 10. I didn't know he had an account. Maybe it was from before he passed." I opened the statement. The date was 6 months before his death. The balance was just over $14,000. Which, for my father, a man who'd worked a modest job and died young, was more money than I'd ever known him to have. Joseph, my mom never mentioned this. She always said he didn't have any savings, that he died with nothing. "You think she knew about it?" I stared at the paper. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." The next morning, I drove to the credit union. The branch was in a strip mall on the edge of town, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. The teller was a young woman with pink-tipped hair and a name tag that said Brittany. She looked at the statement I brought, typed some things into her computer, and frowned. I'm sorry, ma'am. This account was closed about a year after your father passed. Closed? By who? She hesitated. I can't give you that information without proper authorization. I'm his daughter. My mother was his wife. She never told me about this account. I understand, but... Please. I didn't recognize my own voice. I just need to know who closed it. Brittany looked at me for a long moment. Then she glanced around, leaned in, and lowered her voice. The account was closed by a joint holder. Someone who was on the account with your father. I didn't know he had a joint holder. Your mother, ma'am. Catherine Reed. The air left my lungs. She was on it. According to our records, yes. She was listed as a joint owner, and she closed the account 3 months after his death. Where did the money go? I can't access that information without. Please, I'm begging you. She bit her lip, looked around again, and typed a few more keystrokes. The funds were transferred to another account, a personal account, also in her name. At this bank. Yes, ma'am. The account is still active. Can you tell me the balance? Brittany's hands hovered over the keyboard. I really shouldn't. I won't tell anyone. I promise. She stared at me, then she sighed, like she decided she'd already crossed the line and might as well keep going. Just under $12,000. $12,000? She'd taken 14, spent some, and still had 12 left. All these years, she told me she was struggling. She told me she had nothing. She'd taken my money, my time, my labor, and she'd been sitting on a nest egg my father had left behind. Why didn't she tell me? I said out loud, not expecting an answer. Brittany gave me a sympathetic look. I don't know, ma'am, but if I were you, I'd talk to a lawyer. There might be something you can do. I thanked her and walked out in a daze. The afternoon sun was too bright. The parking lot was too loud. Everything felt wrong. I called Joseph as soon as I got to the car. Joseph! My mother had a joint account with my father. She closed it after he died and kept the money. She never told me. There was a pause. How much was in it? 14,000. She still has 12. Allison. I know what this means. She's been lying to me for 24 years. Joseph was quiet for a moment. Then he said, we need to be careful. If she finds out we know about this, she'll just get more defensive, and she's already proving she won't be honest when confronted. So what do? We wait. We collect more evidence. And then we decide how to use it. But waiting was harder than I'd imagined, because now I had a question I couldn't stop asking. What else has she been hiding? It consumed me. I started obsessively going through every scrap of paper in the house, every old file, every box I'd never unpacked from my childhood. I called my cousin, my aunt, anyone who might remember something about my father's finances. Nothing. IT was like he'd left no trace, except that one bank statement. And then, on the 10th day of our truce, Emma came home from kindergarten with a question. Mommy, why did Grandma say the house was in the family? I nearly dropped the dish I was washing. What? She said it last week when I was visiting. She said the house was supposed to be hers because it belonged to the family first. Baby, what are you talking about? Which house? Our house. The new one. She said her mommy, my great-grandma, used to live here. I felt the blood drain from my face. Emma, did Grandma tell you that? She said it was a secret. She said not to tell you because you'd get mad. But I thought you should know because secrets are bad, right? Yeah, baby. Secrets are bad. I knelt down and pulled her into a hug so tight she squirmed. You did the right thing. You always tell me the truth, okay? No matter what Grandma says. Okay, Mommy. Can I have a snack now? I sent her off with an apple and a granola bar and called Joseph immediately. My mom told Emma the house used to belong to my grandmother. Wait, what? The previous owners were strangers. We checked the deed. I know, but my mother told Emma our great-grandmother lived here. Joseph, if she's lying to a 5-year-old, she's planning something. Or she's trying to plant seeds. Make Emma feel like the house belongs to her side of the family. Either way, we need to figure out what she's after. The next day, I drove to my grandmother's old neighborhood. The house had been sold years ago, after she died, but I remembered the address. It was a modest 2-bedroom on the other side of town, not the same street, not the same zip code, not even the same school district. Emma had been wrong about it being her house, or my mother had. But why would she say that? I parked outside the old house. IT had been painted a different color since I'd last seen it, and the rose bushes my grandmother had tended were gone. But the bones were the same. The sloping porch, the creaky front steps, the window above the kitchen sink where she'd always kept a pot of geraniums. I walked up to the porch and knocked. An elderly man with a white beard answered, looking confused. Can I help you? I'm sorry to bother you. My grandmother used to live here, and I was wondering, do you know anything about the house's history? Any records of ownership before you bought it? He squinted at me. You're one of the Reeds? I'm Allison, Catherine's daughter. His expression changed. It wasn't exactly hostility, more like recognition. Your mother came by a few weeks ago, asking the same kind of questions. She did. Said she was doing family research. Wanted to know if I had any old documents from the previous owners. I told her the previous owners were a couple named Henderson. They bought it in the 80s. Before my grandmother? Your grandmother sold it to the Hendersons in 81. I bought it in 95. I've got the paperwork somewhere if you want to see it. That would be incredible. He disappeared inside and came back with a battered folder. I scanned the documents. The Hendersons had bought it in 1981, just as he'd said, and my grandmother had sold it in November of that year. Why? She'd lived there for decades, and why had my mother never mentioned this? Do you know when my grandmother sold the house? He shook his head. No idea. Your mother asked the same thing. I told her I didn't know. I called my cousin Rachel that night. She lived in the next state over, and had always been closer to our grandmother than I was. Maybe she'd remember something. Rachel, I need to ask you about Grandma's house. Which one? The one she lived in before she died. Oh, that one. What about it? Did she sell it? Did she have money problems or something? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Allison, Grandma didn't sell that house. She lost it. The bank took it. I felt the room tilt. Wait, what? She got into debt. Big debt. Medical bills, mostly. After Grandpa died, she couldn't keep up with the mortgage. The bank foreclosed. She had to move into a rental. Mom never told me that. Your mom didn't like talking about it. She was embarrassed, I think. Did Mom help her at all? Help her how? Financially. Did Mom give her money? Rachel paused. I don't think so. Your mother didn't have money back then. She was barely making ends meet with you and Dennis. That's what she said. But I found something else, Rachel. I found a bank account, in Dad's name, with money that Mom took after he died. You're kidding. No. $14,000. And she didn't tell anyone. Allison, that's... Rachel stopped. That's not the first time I've heard something like this. What do you mean? I remember when I was young, your mom and Grandma had a huge fight. Something about money. I didn't know what it was. But after that, Grandma wouldn't talk to her for years. A fight about what? I don't know, but I always wondered if it was about your father's inheritance, because after he died, Grandma started getting these letters from a lawyer. She'd hide them in her desk drawer. I used to sneak a peek sometimes. There was talk about a trust fund. A trust fund? Allison, I could be wrong that I was a kid that I don't remember exactly, but I think your father had more than just that bank account. I think your grandmother knew something, and your mom didn't want her to tell you. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through everything Rachel had said. A trust fund, a fight, a foreclosure, a mother who'd stolen from her daughter, and maybe from her own mother. The pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made my stomach churn. My mother had spent her life positioning herself as the victim, the martyr, the one who'd sacrificed everything for her family, but the reality was the opposite. She'd been taking, hiding, manipulating, and she'd been doing it for decades. And now she wanted my house. Because maybe it wasn't just about Dennis. Maybe it was about something older, something she'd been chasing her whole life. A sense of control she'd never had, a security she'd never built, a fortune she'd never earned. Joseph stirred beside me. You're thinking too loud. I can't stop. What's going on? I told him. Everything. The bank account, the foreclosure, the fight, the letters, the trust fund. He sat up in bed, rubbing his face. Allison, if there's a trust fund, there might be documents. Somewhere. Your father's old things. Your grandmother's things. Someone kept them. Mom would have destroyed them. Maybe. Or maybe she kept them. Because she thought they'd be useful someday. Useful how? I don't know. But I think we need to talk to your aunt again. Or go through your grandmother's old house. It's gone, Joseph. It was sold years ago. There's nothing left. There might be something in storage. Your mom kept a unit, remember? You said she had a storage unit full of old stuff. I stared at him. She does. But I don't have the key. We can find out. The next morning, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, sounding cautious. Allison, it's been a while. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. About what? About Dad's bank account. The one you closed after he died. There was silence. And in that silence, I heard it all. The guilt, the fear, the calculation. I don't know what you're talking about. Mom, I have the statement. I know there was $14,000. And I know you transferred it to another account. Allison, that's a private matter. I was handling your father's affairs after he passed. It had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with me. He was my father. And you never told me. I didn't think it was important. Because it was money you wanted to keep for yourself. Allison. No, Mom. I'm done with lies. I found out about the foreclosure, too. Grandma's house. The one she lost because she couldn't pay the mortgage.